that's what we're going to talk about today, your new book. I read it yesterday, and I thought I might start with something technical in some sense, terminological. It might be regarded as a pretty inflammatory title, The War on the West, and maybe we'll start with that. What do you mean by war, and why use that term?
Essentially, that's interesting. I thought you were going to start with the West, which is
we'll do that next.
A really knotty one to untangle.
Well, we'll do that next for sure.
War, because what I say in the book is that this is what we've been going through. We've been going through a war on everything to do with the foundations of the West, everything to do with the results of the Western inheritance. And when I say that, of course, I mean the war, as I do it bit by bit, on Western history, a war on Western peoples, a war on Western culture, a war on Western religion and philosophy. This position that I argue that we've come to in the present age, where everything is bad if it came from us, let me say, us in the West, and everything is good so long as it hasn't come from us. Now, I should stress, by the way, that what I'm describing here is Western anti-Westernism. There are plenty of other forms of anti-Westernism. There's Russian anti-Westernism, there's Chinese anti-Westernism, all sorts of other kinds. But the one that I think is most interesting, partly because it's so pathological, is what I'm really writing about here, which is Western anti-Westernism. Why we in the West have arrived at this strange place where we venerate everything so long as it's not our own. We respect things so long as it hasn't been produced by the society that also produced us. And I do think this is a fundamental assault. I think it's a fundamental assault, as I try to demonstrate in the book, on all of the foundations, the principles, the foundational figures, the heroes, the great stories, the great themes of the West even, have all come in recent decades under this just relentless assault. And I try to explain why I think that's happened. It's not an entirely new phenomenon, as you know. I mean, it's been a strain of Western thought, arguably for some centuries, if not longer. But that in recent decades, it's picked up a pace. And it's picked up a pace for some very obvious reasons. After the colonial era, it was inevitable that there was going to be an anti-colonial backlash, a post-colonial movement. But that's lingered and turned into something else, as have all of the other backlashes that I lay out. So I do think it's a war. I think it's a complete and fundamental assault on everything that the West has produced, and I think that's why it's deserving of the term.
So to what end?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because of course it's a different aim for different people. I mean, one of the people I write about at one point in the book is Fanon. Frantz Fanon, the distinguished and highly cited post-colonial author, who, like Edward Said, had a profound influence in the academy. The foreword to his last book was written by Sartre. He was a very, very impressive in many ways figure. But his version of what should happen in the post-colonial era was, for instance, I mean, basically entirely Marxist. And it's one of the ironies I try to tease out about this, that, for instance, if in the post-colonial era, people had argued that societies that have been colonized should be returned to a pre-colonial condition, with a return to, let's say, more of the native political and other habits, then that would have been one thing. But writers like Fanon were not doing that. They were arguing that the answer to the colonial era was Marxism. And of course, that has this tremendous irony, doesn't it? Which is that they say, well, this one form of Westernism, Western colonialism, must be replaced because it's Western. And what we'll replace it with is Western Marxism. And so that's just one of the motivations. I think it was a very strong motivation, certainly in the immediate period of the post-colonial era. There are different versions of it now, of course. There's let's say, the social one, the one where it's just rather gauche. I mean, of course, famously, writers like Orwell pointed this out many decades ago. Rather gauche to celebrate anything about your own society, and indeed regarded as being slightly backward, a sign of a sort of low resolution figure that you would do such a thing, whereas the veneration of other cultures was a demonstration of sophistication. A sophisticate would do that. But we do end up in this position today, which is much more dangerous than that. One of the reasons I do the assault on Western history, and do it also by individuals, the figures that used to be, and certainly in my own lifetime, I'm sure in yours, Jordan, some of the absolutely foundational heroes of Western history have come in for specific assault. And you could ask yourself, well, maybe that's because they're overdue some reckoning. And I think it's far more than that, and I try to show that. I try to show, for instance, that the interpretation of, say, Thomas Jefferson, or Winston Churchill, or Abraham Lincoln, has actually become an assault based on the following premise, that if we can take down Churchill, we sort of can get to the roots of taking down British patriotism. If we assault Abraham Lincoln, we've essentially not, and Thomas Jefferson, we've not just assaulted them, we've actually assaulted something that is the absolute root of the American ideal, the heroic story, the heroic figure. And then there's this further layer of that, which is not just with individuals, but with whole societies, so that, for instance, instead of understanding the history of racism as, well, racism is a highly regrettable and ugly human trait, which is consistent across all human societies that we know about, and it is a part of Western history, instead, the whole of Western history is made into a history of racism, in which racism was the guiding force. When, as I explained in the book, or any fair estimate would see it as being an element within Western history, but by no means the thing that drove Western history.
So Jordan asked Douglas, you pick the word war. It can be kind of provocative. Why? And so Douglas goes ahead and gives pretty much of a voluminous response, and I sort of feel like a mosquito in a nudist colony. I just don't know where to begin. But let me begin with, let me start with this premise. I believe there is a war, but that war is on multi-fronts, on multi-beachholds, so to speak. There's a culture war. You've got the ideological war. You've got the political war. You've got the social media war. You've got the religious war. You've got the anti-establishment war. You've got the anti-Westernism war. And this war is occurring from where? It's coming, we're being attacked. And as Douglas pointed out, this Western anti-Westernism, where everything that is good about the West, the rule of law, private property rights, individual rights, the right to free speech, the right to freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, those kinds of things, those are being attacked from within and from without and from abroad. Now, you would expect these kind of attacks to occur from, people from outside your family or outside your country. That you would probably expect, but you wouldn't expect it to come from within the family, from within the country. But that's exactly what's happening, folks. And how are they attacking it? They're attacking our leaders. They're attacking the fundamentals of democracy, of the republic, attacking the great leaders that were there, that created the United States of America, like, attacking the founding fathers, as Douglas mentioned. If you can knock down George Washington, the first president of the United States of America, if you can knock him down from his pedestal, or Abraham Lincoln, or Thomas Jefferson, or any of the Benjamin, for any of the other founding fathers, you can knock down the founding of this country and say, look at how bad this is. These people were bad. If they were bad, then what they formed was bad. That's what's happening when they're taking down, monuments, boxing them up, tearing them down, breaking them apart, not allowing history to be told. All of this is happening. And then, to top it off, you've got colleges, universities, professors They're indoctrinating our children, not just as they leave high school and enter college and universities, but this type of thing is now going on from kindergarten. The transgenderism movement, the CRT movement, all of these isms are coming inside there, and they're trying to replace it, and they're basically saying, no, Westernism is bad, democracy is bad, capitalism is bad. We need to replace it with something else, another ism. Marxism, socialism, communism. Those are the kind of things that's happening. So this war that Douglas is talking about, it is absolutely there. There are battles that are being fought each and every single day. Now, these battles aren't occurring, with bullets or bombs or those kind of things, but they're happening with ideas, with words, with the erosion of laws. Two-tier justice system, a three-tier justice system, where the elites don't have to worry about it. Rules for thee, but not for we. That kind of thing is going on. And these are the battles. This is the war, folks. This is the war that's happening right now. In some places we're winning, in other places we're losing. Overall, right now, I would say we're probably on the losing end of some of this. Things were really bad a few years ago. And we have had some pushback from our side, the conservative side, the right side. But still, when you're fighting a battle and all the communication is on one end and you have very little communication on your end, it's being knocked out constantly. And then you've got social media on the opposite side and yours is being knocked out constantly, or you don't have those social media outlets. Getting that communication out there, getting that thing out to other platforms to get your message out gets more and more difficult. It gets drowned out by even the minority. It seems like they might be the majority, but they're such a small group, but they've got all the powerful outlets to fight their battle with the war of words. Anyways, let's get back to more Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray. We'll do that right now. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir. This is what we have on tap for you today, where I give you my political prescription from my political perspective of what happens when all these things come crashing together. Let's get back to more of the interview right now. Took the wrong break there, folks. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasir. We hope you enjoyed this clip. Check out our other clips of Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray and so much more on the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. Check them out above and below. Leave with my final thought as always: when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.